So I'm just going to study the source codes from Godot's editor. And the main thing that I want to understand now is how they do the docs so that they are resizable. And I might try to create the component that I'm thinking about. Or not create fully everything, but just add the stuff that is the easiest to add for now, which is I wrote down these three main things here, which I think is the stuff that I'm going to need. I'm going to remove some stuff that I had on the front end, I think, because I'm only going to leave the things that I think are the most important. So yeah, I'm probably not going to add the selection. But based on what I wrote, I think that the menu button, I haven't tested yet, but I think this one is the equivalent of the selection on the front end. But I'm probably not going to do this one for now, because this one was mainly for changing the camera mode and changing from the configurations instead of setting the physics to set the edge customization, which I'm probably going to change, I think. So the main thing that I'm thinking about now and I'm trying to clarify is how to build the outer part, let's say, of the stuff that I'm thinking about doing, which is basically going to be something on the side that I already have opened here. It's supposed to be like this. And this is another thing that I have to see is how to, based on this stuff that I wrote here as well, the texture button seems to be the one that you use for creating buttons with icons. But because on the front end here, I did this, as far as I remember, with SVG images. So I want to see if I can use this one with SVG. In most tutorials that I've seen, they use PNG as the texture. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to do this, or if I'm going to... but if I can do it with SVG, I'm going to search for images, obviously, and then just set the images instead, but it's going to be more annoying. So ideally, I would have a component. I think this part I'm still going to have to think about as well. Either I'm going to create another class and then just set the whole thing as its own class, and then change the state of the class based on member variables and do it like this. Or I'm going to just use the normal nodes and then connect them through the headless code that I have, which is basically creating classes from the code, from C++ code, to create the scene, create scenes automatically, let's say. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I have to study more to see. But I couldn't find many examples of, actually I couldn't find any example so far. The one that I found is the VH or V slider or something like that. But yeah, maybe I have to search more for it to find. But I want to find a container that I can put the physics customization components inside. Maybe I should show what I have so far. I think. Then I'm gonna stop. Also, I changed the code that I had before. So the last thing that I did was to finish implementing a variation of barn sets, not really the standard way to do barn sets. So usually the way that I've seen that you're supposed to do barn set is you create a tree that has, depends on the dimension, but 2 dimensions is going to be 4 children for each level, I think. And for 3 dimensions is going to be 8 children. And then each child of the nodes would represent a subspace from a main space. But based on the way that I did it with a binary tree, and then I just changed the way that I'm separating the spaces. It seems to be working right now. There might be something wrong with it, but so far it seems to be working. So I also changed the default values for the arrow here and the size of the arrow and the edges. and the spheres, but I think I'm gonna leave it like this for now. But the thing that I want to change is this. So yeah, what I'm thinking about is I want to translate this stuff that I had here to this stuff that I'm doing on Godot. So this is supposed to be, like the physics components here is supposed to be the same as this one. Obviously not exactly the same. Yeah, but I think, yeah, for the selection, it's just layouts. Maybe after I do the layouts, I'm gonna need the selection. But maybe I can do it in a different way as well. But the idea that I have here on the front end as well is to put this stuff inside of this place here, and then just make it based on one of the selection of the icons instead of showing up here. And that's basically what I'm trying to do now here. So what I have to do, I created this class, and this class automatically creates this configurations here based on a struct that I have there. And yeah, I think the idea is to probably create, I have to see obviously what to do. So I'm gonna look for the code on the editor, because I think it might be counterproductive, but I think it's worth it because I'm gonna learn about that, more about the editor as well. So the first thing that I wanna do actually is to figure out how to increase the size of this and to make the text here to be something that I can change in the same way that I have there. But here I can't really change based typing as well. So I do want to have, because one thing that I noticed is kind of annoying when you set up there is that, like, because the values on, especially the gravitational constants, which is the most important one, I think, because the values are big. Every time you change slightly, it changes a lot on the visualization, which is not very good. So ideally, I would be able to set any value based on an input, but I couldn't find this as well. I think the closest one that I found is a label class. So what I'm thinking about doing is just looking for the examples on the editor, on the inspector class there, to copy from the way that the editor does it. Because on the editor, I'm pretty sure that there are several values there that you can just type the new value. So what I'm going to do is just search for the example and then just copy the class. And then I'm going to change this class here. I'm going to write down here. It's probably the first thing that I'm going to do. And I have to remove because there are some values here that don't do anything here. And I think I'm just gonna remove the constants. I'm pretty sure it does something because I've seen there. It's just the K constant you use on the spring force. The length was supposed to, on the other one, it was regulating the amount of it was regulating the force on the spring. But I think on this time, I'm not gonna do it with this one. I'm just gonna leave the gravitational constant, central gravity, which is kind of simulating the central mass of the entire thing, I think. It's just basically the negative position of each node, and it adds that to the force on each frame. And then the gravitational, I think, yeah, theta is the threshold used to calculate the forces, just the threshold of simplification of calculation of the forces on the nodes. The gravitational constant is the most important, I think. Is like gravitational constant and central gravity are both that allow you to separate more the nodes or put them closer together. So I think those two are the most important. And probably the void overlap, the damping and spring length I'm gonna remove. So I think I'm just gonna look into the editor. I need to see if I can find, so here, for example, would be one. Maybe I should search on ChatGPT as well. So I'm gonna close this stuff here. Oh, the thing that I did, the thing that I changed was from the previous time that I did this, was I was getting an error because, and this is something that I was debating whether or not to change, which is basically here I'm recreating the tree each time and then I have to delete the tree. And I was doing based on normal objects and I was using memnew to allocate memory. And I was debating whether or not it's worth it to change this so that I create the tree only once, and then inside of each frame I only rebalance the tree. But I think that's a lot more complicated, so I decided that I'm not going to do that for now. But when I was trying to delete the nodes here, I was having a problem, so I had to change, and I basically copied the way that they do it with dynamic BVH, which is a class that they created to help calculate collisions. It's basically a tree that contains, or that separates the space. Is a space partitioning tree, which is similar to what I did here. But I did this way because it's a lot easier to implement like this, I think, barn sets, than to try to implement barn sets with dynamic PVH that they have there. But then I just basically changed the class so that I have a node inside of this class, and then I just save the roots inside. So the root is a null pointer, and then I use the same class that they use there on the dynamic PVH to allocate memory, which is this node allocator, which is the other class. There's a space allocator, which is the same one that they use on the dynamic BVH, and then I change so that it doesn't inherit from objects and it's not a part of the thing. And it seems that it is working, so I'm just going to leave it like this for now. Maybe in the future I will change, but yeah. So I'm just going to close everything. Yeah. So I think that it's probably easier to. I'm pretty sure that the class responsible there on the editor for allowing you to change the states of objects is called inspector or something like that. Inspector doc. Because I remember I was searching for this some time ago. So I'm just gonna see if I can. So there's two main priorities for me now. One is the label there, and the other one is to figure out how to do the resizable doc. And I want to do something similar to what they have there on the files. So it's going to be both. It's going to be the icon section separated by another section that has the customization, and the customization separated by the visualization with the resizable thing. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. I do remember, and it's gonna be kind of annoying to see based on the editor though, because I do know that for the way that they do the docs there is based on other. I think they created an array or something like that, and then they use it in enum to specify the values of the array or something like this, and they regulate they manage the docs based on that array. So it's not very easy to know how it works there, because there is other stuff involved as well. It's probably a line edit, I think, now that I think about it. Because I remember on this line edit, if I remember correctly, has an event that is triggered on the whole sets of instructions, that's the whole flow you have to go through to export templates. Because I remember that I was trying to understand the events, and I'm pretty sure it's on this class. So obviously the easiest thing to do is to try to implement this one. I should have opened on VS Code, so that way it's easier to figure out. I'm gonna go see the constructor here. Yeah, I'm 100% sure because of the name here that this class is the one responsible for whatever shows up here. And here is obviously you're gonna have the states. Mainly, obviously this tab here, the other ones are probably other classes. But this tab here is the class there that builds this, and it's gonna allow you to set the stuff. So maybe actually I should change probably, and maybe I should change. Like obviously the easiest thing to do would be to just use this class instead of the one that I have there, and just change it enough so that it doesn't have to interact with the editor. Because as far as I remember, like these classes, they don't interact with the objects directly. They create a version of the object based on the subscription, let's say, that you do on the class DB class. So there's the class DB and the object slots. Class DB is there's a global class that is an instance of class DB that is used to keep track of all the types that are used on the engine. And there's this object slots that keeps track of all the instances of objects. And the class DB is the interface of the engine that the editor uses to communicate with the engine. So if I remember correctly, when you change stuff here from the editor, they use some functions to recreate the class, let's say, based on the class DB specification. And this is the reason why a lot of the times I was having problems with memory, because if you don't subscribe the classes directly in the correct way, using bind methods, I think, and also using the macro there, the editor can't find the class. So it still works if you run directly with the debugger, but it doesn't work if you try to run it through the editor, because the editor can't reconstruct. So this is the main thing, that these classes here, they are designed to work with the editor. But obviously, I think it's a good idea to. I just have to see if I can figure out which one is for which. Because obviously, I imagine, like, since it's only this class, it's probably the way that it works is that it's going to change whatever shows up there based on the data. So I have to understand how at what moment do they create, or like what moment the bridge between the whatever shows up there and whatever is happening under the hood. What moment does that happen? It might be this button here. History button. Subs resource HP. So I assume that this one is probably the one. I'm going to open this stuff on here. Actually, I have to close this one. So maybe it's better to search for the things that are. Actually, I think I'm just gonna comment it out. It's probably better. So let me see. because it is kind of annoying too. Because there might be, maybe it's just, I don't remember all the places that I put this stuff, but I do know that I'm doing the, so I think it's just the physics slider and custom slider. As I'm doing these components based on whatever I have here. It's interesting that the timestamp min max are not showing up there. Oh, maybe it didn't do here. Oh, I forgot to put here. Interesting. So I forgot to initialize the other ones. Oh, actually, I don't think I forgot. Yeah, the reason why I didn't put here is exactly because of the same reason why I'm going to comment out this stuff now. Is that I thought because based on the way that I was doing the front ends, the times that I was testing, I didn't use these values that much, these other values for the simulation. So I thought that they don't matter that much. And obviously I want to simplify as much as possible. Just leave this stuff that actually matters. So maybe if I just comment these values, it's not going to show there, I think. Because I'm doing based on whatever I put inside of the hash map that I have here. So theta, gravitational constants, spring constant. I think that's probably it. So I think it doesn't matter if I leave the rest as it is here. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it like this. And here I'm just to test, I'm using this random number for the position of the nose. So I'm looping over here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this. So what I'm gonna do is open this stuff on VS Code, so that's that is easier to change stuff. But probably what I'm gonna do, so let me copy this stuff. That's probably better. I'm gonna close this and build to make sure that's gonna work. Then after I do this, it's showing warning messages there in the beginning on purpose because of the global signal class. Because depending on the order that the classes are initialized, on the initialization, one class is going to emit the signal, which is the physics slider. Because this class works based on a normal signal that Godot already has, which is the value changed here. So when you build this class, I think Godot or the editor probably calls this value or emits the value changed signal for each slider after the initialization, so that they call this function here that I put, and then this function emits the global signal, which is the signal that I'm using, that I created, a class that I created to be able to communicate with, for nodes to communicate on different parts of the tree. So I'm using this to sync the graph component, which has the state of the graph, with the GUI components that I'm using there to change the values. So that's basically the function that makes the simulation change every time you change the value there. So when this class is initialized, the other one is not initialized yet, which means that this tries to emit a signal, but that it doesn't have anything listening, so it sends the error message there, but it's fine. It's supposed to work like this. I thought there was an error some time ago, but it seems that it's working, and the error is something else. So I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. And probably, so I think that the class that I have to change is this one. So this one has the name of the, basically the way that it's working now is that the custom physics is a class that contains all the options. So I use this, which is the one that I had there on the scene. So this one just basically uses the structs that's created there on the other thing. And the struct has on the initialization the default values that I had on the front end here. And based on which value that is initialized there on the hash map is going to initialize this physics slider class, which is the one that contains the label and the default value, minimum, maximum, and the step, which make up the ranges for each one. And then I subscribe this class to with a normal signal so that it calls this function. But this one I think I'm gonna remove now. This is another thing. Because I was emitting the signal here instead of emitting on the physics slider, but then I realized that's probably better to emit from the slider. So I'm just gonna remove this as well. Adds as a child, and I put this on the, I think it's a vector that I created. So this one is the one on the constructor that I'm gonna sign up, I think. This one on the normal signal on the value change, that I have the other function emits the global signal, and the Graph3D subscribes to the global signal based on the scope and the name of the signal. And then it runs this function sets the value of the binary set parameter inside of the Graph3D. And then across the functions that's calculate simulation, I'm using the binary set parameters that I have on this class. So it changes the values there. So this one is for the name outside of the whole thing. So probably what I'm gonna do is just change on this class here. So this one has the label, which is the name that shows up there. Now I'm gonna, wow. Editor inspector. It's gonna go here as well. So the name is the name of the parameter. Then I create this slider, which is the value of the parameter. And what creates the functionality, this is the signal. So I'm just setting the initial values, the minimum and maximum. And it's really easy to do this. You just go over the editor and then change the value, and they put a message there. They log a message every time you change something to make it easier for you to know what happened, which is very nice. So they made it super easy to figure out what is going on every time you change something. So probably what I'm gonna do is on this one. I think here every time, so here I'm using this H box. So I think with the H box, if I understand correctly, which I'm not really sure if I do, but I think every time that you add something, it's gonna align horizontally each thing. I do remember that this was kind of annoying when I did this for the first time, so I'm not really sure if it's gonna work out. I might have to think about this. Because I think, I'm not really sure what makes more sense. Because the thing is, like here you can both, Like you see what's happening here, but you can't really change. So like obviously, ideally you would be able to see the value, and then also change by typing stuff. So either if that's not possible, then obviously I can add on the side of the value, but that's not very good, I think. So this is the main thing that I'm trying to figure out. So here I already have a label. So the one that I have there is the label class. But I'm pretty sure I can't, yeah, I can't type the value. So I have the name, this is the H box, which is the container. This is the slider. Yeah, so I have the H slider, which is the one that is horizontal. The other one's the V slider, which is the vertical slider. And you set the values, and then you have the label, which is the name. No, the label is the value, actually. Yeah. Have the label, which is the value. I think. Because I'm changing the text here based on the value. So the label is the value. So probably what I'm gonna do, yeah. So I think that the easiest thing to do is just change, replaces this label with the value there that I find on the inspector class. So what I'm gonna do is just close all of these things here and just leave the. So let me test first before I close. Then after I test, I'm just gonna close all the tabs that are not. I'm just gonna leave the physics slider open, and then I look into the classes on the other one. Spectre doc. Oh, the other thing that I changed is that before I was building the graph on the node enter tree event, but now I changed the ready event. And I'm not really sure, but I do think that it became a little bit faster to load the thing. So I think there is a problem if you put stuff on the node enter tree event, because then the functions are going to be called probably multiple different times as the editor is initializing, I think. But I'm not 100% sure if that was the case, or maybe just like illusion, because it's still taking some time to load stuff. But I do think that it's faster now than it was before. So it seems that. So I think that it is working. So obviously I can change the value directly on the labeler. So what I'm going to do is just search for, if I can find, obviously. So I do think it's working. Well, the other thing I have to see is the world environment node. But I do think I wrote down here. Because I need to figure out how to make it the black background. So inspector. So let me close everything that is not physics slider. It's probably the easiest thing to do. So first thing is the label. I'll figure out on the inspector there, and then I'm probably gonna, yeah, the problem is, I do think that replacing is probably gonna work, because here is basically the same purpose. So yeah, the customization thing I think is pretty much the same stuff from the editor that I want to have there. But then obviously the main difference is the functionality. So like how it connects with everything else. I should probably open the editor again and see if I can find, based on tooltip of I think that this is the wrong class. It's not the same one that I was looking at there. This is what I mean. So yeah, this just happens as well. I don't think that this instance here is related to the file, the stuff that is on the left side. So the nodes that show up there, the names, but I do know that for sure that the names that show up there every time you add a node is going to be a tree item. So I think it's basically the same logic here on the inspector. So they just create this class that holds the state of whatever shows up on the editor, and then they use this class state to translate to the class DB using these functions here. So the property info, you got property list and stuff related to this. So these functions here are the ones that communicate with class DB to get the states or the information for the class based on names. I think they do the same thing here, probably. They probably save the resources here. So they build this stuff based on the tree item. Oh, there's also the, it's gonna take time to see everything. And the two tip is the easiest one to see what's most likely the relationship there on the front end and the source code here. So I think obviously based on this, they probably use menu button class for anything that requires a selection. And then you put whatever. So obviously the easiest thing to do is just copy the way that they do here and then just change the functionality. So that's can put whatever I want there. But the main thing that I'm probably gonna incorporate first, so after the label is gonna be this check button, I think here, which I think this is like a similar button for the on-off thing here. This is another thing that I have to do. That's I'm gonna write down here just the drag. It might be more annoying after I was thinking about it, because it's not exactly the same as depending on the camera, because of it might be like you might not be able to use the get relative from the mouse position to move the node in the exact same amount that the mouse has moved. So it might be more annoying to do this, but hopefully not. The thing that is kind of interesting is that, like, how do they, if it is based on the class, then how do they create? So it makes me think that it's probably like there's probably a class that's gonna loop over whatever is selected. So there needs to be a communication between this class and the node class, I think. So maybe the 3 item stuff is related to that. So like the bridge between the node selection on the left, because obviously when you click the node selection, it has to change the state of the inspector. So probably this line edit is the one that I'm looking for. I'm gonna open again so that I can look there, the names that I see here, but I'm gonna probably to test the line edit thing. So there's 2 annoying things, I think. Like, one is to determine what's gonna be displayed there. Like I have to clarify the connection between the slider and whatever shows up there. It's probably gonna happen inside of the function. So it's both gonna be on the constructor. So I think that probably the way that you do it is just by changing. So like change the label inside physics slider. So it works with line edits. Yeah, obviously on the editor there, I'm gonna see when I change the state of the thing, I'm gonna see what kind of function is used. Then I can go over the line edit and see if the function exists there, because usually they print here whenever you change the value. So, and I have to see if the line edit has something that allows you to set the state, let's say. So like on the constructor I set the whatever shows up there as the default value that I have here, and then I synchronize like on the function that changes, on the function that is going to be called when the slider value changes, I, instead of change the value of the label, I just change the value of the line edit. So it's going to be harder if you can't really like make the thing have default, and then I also have to see how to prevent other inputs that are not floats or integers. So this one, I assume that is probably the main container where they're gonna put everything. Placeholder filter properties. Is this one? So maybe is another. Yeah, so that element is probably this one. So maybe it's another box that they use for the. So it's this box that I'm looking for. Let's see, one. The set age offsets. Yeah, but this, it doesn't allow me to see. because I think that the H offset's gonna be on the camera and not related to the inputs. Yeah, but one thing that I can do is just put a breakpoint, but I think it's probably not necessary. I was gonna say, like, so every control node, the way that the events are gonna be called, or like, I don't remember really well the specifics of it, but eventually on the control node, there's a function called GUI input that is gonna be called after the event's triggered. And yeah, what I can do is just put a breakpoint there, and then I just change, whenever I change the value here, it's just gonna go there, then I can see the flow there. But I'm pretty sure that is the line edit, because I remember from the other stuff that I did. So I'm just gonna look a little bit more, then I'm going to, because one thing that I'm curious about is how do they update, if it's dependent on the class, how do they update what shows up there? Maybe it's not this class. Yo, thanks for the follow. I think that based on the tooltip here, this class, I think that most likely what is going on, like since there isn't anything here, is that this is going to be, this class is the one that manages the states here of whatever shows up here. And the other class is the one that manages the entire state. And that's why I have the filter properties there on the tooltip. So yeah, I think that's, I'm 100% sure that this class is going to be the one that manages everything. But I think obviously based on here is going to be this editor inspector, the one that's going to manage the properties. And then they link based on this. So obviously, so I think, so maybe there's a way to select based on the inspector here. Yeah, probably one of these functionalities here or whatever. There's probably a way to select the object from here, I think. Yeah. And I think that once you select the class from here, it's gonna run that resource selected. But there's also, yeah, so, but I think that I'm not gonna be able to see, because probably the way, like, obviously it makes more sense, because what I'm thinking about is that there needs to be a connection between here. And obviously it makes more sense that this connection is gonna happen on the editor node class. So the question is, where is the functionality that connects both? But I think it's probably going to be similar to the one to this function here, because this one is going to handle whenever you change the object there, but it might be different. So here there isn't much, but it does involve the editor nodes, obviously. Also, yeah, maybe it's not worth it to see this now. Should just focus on the other stuff there. But I think it was probably this function here. So this function probably manages the. It is kind of confusing because of the relationship between classes, but I think that this is probably the one that is going to determine what shows up there on the inspector. Yeah, inspector dot edit current node. So this is probably the one. So probably what I assume happens is that whenever you change the selection of the nodes on the left, it's going to call this function from the editor node, which is going to call the function from inspector dot doc, and it's going to change the state there, I think. So there's both edits and updates. So property list changed. Interesting. I think it's not worth it for me to explore too deep into this now, because it doesn't matter for me that much. I just want to know just want to understand more what classes they use there, because I'm definitely gonna use in a different way there. Like the problem with copying everything from the editor is that obviously, like I think it's gonna be counterproductive because I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time changing everything. Because like the way that they designed this is so that it works with like the whole thing. And the way that I'm thinking about doing is just gonna be connecting with whatever's going on the graph 3D or on the 3D scene. What is the other one? Updates. And pop-up is just, as far as I remember, it's more for stuff that is related to pop-ups, obviously. So like whenever you click something that opens up the file dialog or whatever, it's gonna be more stuff like that. So I don't think that is anything directly related to that. So probably, yeah, but the thing is that on the constructor of this one, it doesn't have much. So probably the best thing to do is just try the line edits. Maybe I do have to spend a bunch of time trying to understand how the relationship between everything, because I have to understand how do they, like, yeah, but maybe it's easier. So this is kind of the problem, because if I just set the value from here, it's not going to allow me to, based on whatever shows up here, it's not going to allow me to see what functions on the GUI, the control elements are being called, because it shows what functions from the class that is changing is being called. So I think that obviously, I wonder if this one is different than the, yeah, I'm trying to think what is the easiest way to figure out like what are the classes that are being used here. I think after I figure out, so one is the line edit, obviously. Now I want to know this one. So after I figure out, I can just look at the source code for the line edits and then just see if they just try different functions probably. I think this is the thing, is if I can just look into the class and figure out, then I have to figure out the relationship, which is going to be harder for sure, because then like there isn't going to be anything explicitly saying, because obviously it's going to depend on the data. It just depends on the whatever is happening on the editor, the state of the editor. So probably with the debugger is going to be easier if I go that route, but it's obviously a lot easier if I can just figure out by looking the source code here. Yeah, class DB. So this is probably the class. Yep. This, I'm very confident that this is going to be the function that changes everything there. And it's probably the one that, if it's not this one, it's going to be one that is called here, I think. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but I do think that's when you change the state there of a property of the object, it's going to call this function probably. And this, because this one mainly classes from class B. Call this from class B. So this is getting, classes is the global object that they use to keep track of all the types. So it's gonna get the types. It's gonna get the type based on the name that he has there. And then it's gonna get the properties based on the type. So for each class that you wanna register on the class DB, you just use that property macro inside of the class. Once you understand how it works, it's not that hard, to be honest. Like the hardest part is understanding everything in the beginning. But now it's becoming a lot easier to understand how everything works. But basically this macro here allows you to, I just copy the pattern whenever I wanna implement. So just search for implementations there. And this is based on the variant class, which is a class that has a bunch of C++ stuff that allows them based on templates to convert the different types. So with the variant, it allows you to register the information of the class on the class DB. And then they use whatever you put here to allow you to, so each time that you want to set a property on a class so you're able to change it from the editor, you just call the macro and then you have to specify two different functions, which is the setter and getter for the property. And property is going to be the member variable of the class. So for anything that is more complex, you probably use the variant object type here. And yeah, that means that the property has to inherit from the object. And it's based on whatever types the variant class supports. So there's the main ones, the float int bool, vector3, vector2. I think probably all the ones that are used most of the time. Yeah, I don't remember if there is a one for a string or if it's just for, but I think that there is a one for string and string name. Yeah, for string, I'm pretty sure that there is. And I do remember that I went over this a little bit, but I don't remember how the connection is. But I think it's based on the name again. So whatever name you put here is going to try to find on the class. Because it uses another class called bind methods, I think, or method bind, something like that. I think method bind that holds the information for the functions, and then there's another class probably for the properties. Yeah, I think for the properties, property info, the class. And Yeah, it's basically gonna use this function here to get, using those classes, to get the information based on the way that you subscribe there. So just transferring the state using the class DB. So whenever you see class DB, it's already like a good indication that the function is related to the bridge between the engine and the editor. So you're just getting the name for this. And this undo and redo, as far as I understand now, it is not directly correlated with this stuff because it's more, as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I think that this class is the one that keeps the states of whatever happened, the actions that happened on the editor, so that you can press Ctrl Z, and I think Ctrl Shift Z to redo it and undo redo, obviously. So I don't think that is directly correlated there with changing the state. There's probably something here. So it's probably this function. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's, because this one calls the other one. So let me think again. I'm going to see probably the best thing to do is just to look into the line edits and then just try the line edits. But I think for the other one, I'm gonna have to spend some time thinking about what to do. Because it might be easier to just try to figure out based on whatever they have here. Because I think that the one that I wrote down for changing the state of the physics is just check button, but based on the tutorials, I think that this is a different class than the one that they are using here somewhere there. Yeah, here on the on. And I think this one is probably better for because it's closer to what I had on the front end. So I think I have to. Yeah, I need to figure out how. I'm not really sure. Like if I clarify how they load the stuff here. Yeah, so there's probably a function that's going to be related to the property that based on whatever the type of the property is going to decide what control nodes should load. I think that's what makes the most sense. So if I can clarify, then I think it's probably harder, but then it allows me to see all the control nodes that they're going to use for each type of the member variables. And I think it's probably better to spend time trying to figure this out because it's very similar to what I want to do there probably. And even if I don't do now, I'm probably gonna do it at some point. Because I was thinking about also putting the values for allowing you to change edge parameters. I'm probably gonna do that on this thing that I'm developing there. So. The notification process, so the notification function is a function that runs at different stages of the rendering cycle, and when you're setting up everything, and like basically all the cycles from the setup to the rendering of everything. And then for each node, it allows you to change the behavior of a class hierarchy by implementing functionality here, and this function is called on the macro. So every time you use the GD class macro to subscribe the class, it defines the function based on the name of the M class here. So the notification is going to call the other notification function that this macro defines. which is this function here. And then this function basically is a recursive function that is going to call the notification for all the classes on the class hierarchy. And then you can decide, you can pass a variable to reverse which class gets called first, but I think by default, the base class of the class is going to be the one that calls its notification first. And then all the other classes that inherit from that class, if they have defined the notification, they're going to call the notification. And then the argument that they receive is going to depend on the stage. So basically, this is equivalent to the signals you have on the GDScript. So the ready function there, when you're putting code on GDScript, is going to be the equivalent to the notification function, notification ready case here. And then the process is going to be equivalent to the process, and the process physics, I think, or physics process is going to be whatever happens inside of the physics. So this runs every frame, and it's going to run whatever it has here. So this one I also remember. Actually, maybe not this, because I do remember like something similar to this, but like with a different type of property class. But I do think based on the names there, obviously it's going to be related to the whatever properties show up there, I think. This is kind of annoying. Because like this macro here comes from a file there. And this one also I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out. But now I understand how it works. So it basically creates these functions based on the name, whatever name you pass there. Like it's going to call the function. And this function is defined on a file that is generated on build time. Because I think that they generate on build time because of the versions, and is a file related to GDScript. So, yeah, if I remember correctly, it's going to be on the objects. Whatever the object class is, there's a file that's generated. Not true. I don't remember. No, I think it's this one. There might be the other one. So it's this one and this one. Whenever you call the macro, is gonna. This one is used on the node class. These macros here, and as far as I understand now, they are the ones that create the bridge. So this function, the functions that are defined here, are going to be used to create the bridge between GDScript and C++. So these macros are called inside of the node class. And whenever this other macro here is called, based on whatever the value they pass here, is basically just going to call this, which is defined inside of the macros here. So just basically calling GD virtual with whatever name. This is a token pasting operator on C++, which basically means that whatever pass here is just going to connect. It's just going to replace. It's like connecting the names. It's kind of like concatenating strings, like similar, but probably different under the hood. Yeah, so it's probably going to be this one that is called there. A call false. But obviously, like this one I still don't know very well because I didn't spend too much time trying to understand what exactly is going to happen there. Because like even though I can see this, it's kind of, you can't really see what's going to happen there, I think. It's calling this function, but then like whatever, like what happens? And I think it's not worth spending time now, if you understand this. But it's probably, it definitely calls something from the script. From GD script. So the question is whether or not I can figure out what is going on without having to understand that. I think all this. So this probably is a function that is gonna get from the file, I think. Packet sing is for the packet sing class is the one that is used to read and write the sing files. So I think that this is related to probably file, or yeah, the cache somewhere, some cache somewhere. So let me see. So what I'm trying to figure out is how do they decide what elements, what U element is they show there based on the property. So it's basically, so I assume that each block here is probably a class that handles, I think. So maybe it's not the editor, maybe it's going to be like a member variable on the editor. I should probably look for that there. Because I think that probably is going to be the H box or V box. So yeah, probably let me look into the constructor. I think it's going to be easier than. Yeah, I think that's probably this thing here. Special. Object is a null pointer. So I think that's based on the editor node functionality there. What's going to happen is when you select the item, it's going to change the value of this object here based on the tree. So this stuff on here is determined by the tree item class, whatever shows up here. So I think it calls the function from the editor node. Then the editor node says the editor node communicates to class DB to get the information of the class based on the name of the tree item, and then it changes the value of the object based on that, I think. So I think that because it doesn't have, and the process, this function here makes it so that whenever you set this to false, it makes it so that it doesn't call the notification process on the notification function. So it means that by default, it's not going to call that. So it probably at some points in the cycle, either here on this class or editor node, is going to call set process and set to true here. But I think in the beginning, it is not doing anything. I think that in the beginning, on the constructor, it doesn't do anything because it shouldn't have any object selected by default, I think. So whenever the object selected probably sets this to true so that it updates on each frame, whatever's happening there. But I'm not 100% sure if this, like, and it's kind of hard to think about because I do have to look into the other stuff to figure this out, I think. But it's probably going to be related to this variance. It's kind of difficult to... Structures. I think that this is not going to be directly related. Like, I think what is happening is that this VBox here is going to be the thing that creates these things here. But I'm not really sure what is the best way to figure out the connection there. Because on the other functions, it seems as like it's a dead end. Because I don't want to spend much time. Even if I spend time here, I think that's going to be hard to figure out. I think that's probably the biggest problem with this approach here, but based on other stuff that I was trying to do, I think it's probably like you can't really run away from this, because whenever you have something that requires you to update different versions, so like basically when you want to update the state of the code based on versions or based on whatever cache, you're gonna have to create a system where you're gonna have files generated on build time. Because you have to create code that generates other codes, and whenever you do that, then it creates these situations where it becomes like harder to figure out what is going on, because the state depends on whatever is going to happen on runtime. So, and on the debugger on VS Code, it doesn't allow you to. It doesn't step over the code generated on build time. So whenever it reaches the macro there, it's just going to stop. Like, it's not going to show what happens. So I can't really go with the debugger either. So like obviously, I think that the two main approaches probably would be to just console log a bunch of stuff, or to not print. I forgot what I was gonna say. There was another thing that was just on top of my mind. And maybe if I forget about it, it's gonna come back to my mind. But I think either way, it's not worth it to do this. Figure out. Oh yeah, do experiments. So one way is to console log stuff, or yeah, print stuff, and the other way is to run a bunch of experiments. So you just keep everything the same and then change one thing at a time. Just see what's going on. But I think it's not worth it to... This is kind of the problem, because I think there, if I go based on the properties, I'm going to get into this dead end. So I have to think about something else. A different approach. Maybe I go through the editor nodes and try to figure out from there. I'm pretty sure that the line edit is the one that is used to... And probably what I'm going to do, probably most likely, is to replace the label with the line edit, and just look into the line edit class to see what functions I can call to... I think that one is probably not going to be that hard, but I think it would be better if I was able to just look in the way that they do it, because obviously it works for all the classes. So like, if I can clarify the way that they do it, then it's going to become a lot easier for me to develop classes that have the same logic. But I'm probably not going to use I'm not going to do it in the same way, I think, because the way that I'm thinking about doing is just connecting directly with the class. So it's actually like not even maybe it is connecting with the class actually, because what I'm going to do is just use the global signal there that I created probably. use the global signal and then connect the state of whatever is showing on the visualization based on the functionality on the global signal. But maybe, but I'm not really sure if it is worth it to, like, there's two different approaches. One is to just copy, figure out the exact class that they use to build this stuff here, and then just put this on the stuff that I have there. But the thing is, like I would do that and then remove or change the functionality related to the class DB, because I don't necessarily want to, like on the game or on the application, I don't want to have stuff related to the editor, if I can, because I think it's gonna make it faster if I don't. So I think that the connection has to be directly with the states that is managing whatever is showing up. But maybe that's the only way to update the whatever shows up there based on whatever class you have. But I guess I can just simplify, like if I can figure out the functionality, then simplify the functionality so that, like, because here, the reason why I think that they use the class DB is because this is going to work for whatever class you have selected here. But if I only want to put the state based on specific classes that I want to allow for customization, which in my case would be just the edge and the, oh, this is weird. Oh, no, this is because of the, yeah, never mind. Yeah. I thought that the edge here was wrong for a second, but it's from the gizmo. But yeah, for my case, mainly what I'm probably gonna allow for changing is just the edge, the arrow, and the sphere. But maybe it is, because the problem is, like, I'm not really sure if I set up in the same way that they did, if it's gonna be, if I'm gonna have to use the build for the application that the editor build, because when you do the editor build, then obviously you're gonna compile a lot more code, so it's gonna be a lot more, I think. But I'm not really sure if there's like a very big difference. Maybe actually it doesn't matter, so maybe it's possible to use. One thing that I would change is probably the style, but I do think that based on tutorials that I've seen as well, there is some stuff to change the theme, so I have to look into this more as well, because I'm not really... But maybe is like the easiest thing to do is just copy the entire thing. Yeah, but I'm gonna have to change anyway, but maybe I should do the way that they are doing here, because it's gonna be... Like, the main thing that I'm gonna have to change is the connection of the, because obviously this is connected to this one. So the main thing to change is, so I have to clarify what is the connection and then figure out if it's worth it to make the connection based on whatever is showing up on the visualization instead. Or whatever I want, actually. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to see if he knows. So, like, what class is responsible on Godot C++? What class is responsible? Monitoring Spectre plugin. Interesting. So here is probably the functions that's obviously based on the name. Functions are gonna parse the objects, and then this one is probably gonna be the one. Yeah. So this, I think it's probably this one, the one that creates. And here you have the macros that set up everything. So the I don't remember which one was. I think it was update property. So it doesn't. It's probably somewhere else that. It's probably on the other class that it does. It subscribes. So it's not this one. That should be somewhere else. Not very sure where. Substantiate property. Parse property. So I'm not really sure if this is how it works. Like if when you put the name here, it's gonna subscribe so that it calls this one. Not really sure. I think that it has to be like this because it's probably related to the script. Sometimes the properties are gonna be related, I think. So it has to be updated on both places. And that's probably the only thing that makes sense to me. But I do think that these are gonna be the functions. It doesn't. So maybe the other ones, these ones. So it's probably, yeah, it has to be this one. Not really sure. I'm not like if the only way is to figure this one out, then I might have to do it. But I want to think about. I want to see if I can find different ways first, because I think that's like this one is gonna be very annoying. to figure out. Maybe like if you look in the macro there, it's gonna be easy because it's just calling this stuff here. And so whenever you put this on the class there, the functions are gonna become part of the class. So probably when it's doing the call, it's just calling whatever function it has here. So I think that this is just gonna call. Yeah, but in order to understand this, I think that I have to spend time to understand the script instance, which is gonna be script instance. I think is the class that's gonna manage the scripts. So it's related to GD scripts, I'm pretty sure. But I'm not really sure if it's gonna allow me to understand how the control nodes are related to the properties. So I have to see. Maybe if I, yeah, but I guess can try to look for here. Because obviously now I think that's what is gonna happen is just gonna call this one. So I don't know which one comes. I think probably parses the property first. Then it's gonna call this class here, this function to change the states. So the moment it calls this, it probably selects the control node for that property. Yeah, I think that like it has to be somewhere here. I'm trying to find the function that's gonna, based on the properties, is gonna select what class, what control nodes used. Hmm. Let me think about this. So like it has to be. So obviously here is gonna be an array of plugins. So for the plugins, I think I can see it on the, like stepping over, putting the, because I have to see what plugin is gonna call this function, but I'm not really sure if like, and because from here there isn't much I can see there. I'm just gonna call from here. So I think that's from here. I can't really know. So maybe it's this one. Get editor for property. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is the function. Yeah, I found it. So it is this one. Nice. It has to be this one. So it does based on the variants, but I think that these are not the classes that do it. there are classes that are used to do it. So it's classes that manage the states of whatever is going to show up there. But obviously based on this, so I'm going to write down this because I'm very confident that this is the one that's... So this function is used to, based on whatever object and the variant type, is going to select what of the editor classes it uses to build the control node that is going to manage the state there. So like for the input there, I'm probably going to test with line edit first, but obviously I want to see, so like knowing this one is going to allow me to, so what I'm going to do is just explore all these classes here, because this one is going to allow me to understand more what control nodes should be used for each different property type. I'm gonna write the name or the file path as well. And then I have to see, like, there's also the other stuff, which is the resizable thing. I'm not really sure which one is more important to do first. Like, there's two things that are kind of annoying now. One is this resizing thing, and the other one is figuring out what is the best way to set this stuff, like, because the problem is that there's this relationship between classes, class hierarchies, and composition. So whenever you have a component that is too unique, it makes more sense to break down the component down into different classes. And then the way you build the component is by structuring the tree, which is how you build a scene. So this is kind of the annoying part, because if I can't build a class that is going to contain the thing, which probably I won't be able to do it, because I think it's like the design that is probably better is to have a generic thing. So actually, I'm going to have a class that is a placeholder that's based on the arguments that it receives or some function. It changes the amount of icons that it has on the left and the functionality associated with the icons. So the icons are probably going to be, it's going to be a button, and then based on the button, I select whatever shows up there, which class is going to show on the other parts of the thing. But then I have to connect these classes through the thing, through the headless code. So like it's, the part that is annoying is to test this stuff, because it makes more sense to test from here, I think. So I'm gonna have to like add the node here, whatever has there, age slider, or no, yeah, the age separator probably. So maybe this. So now that I found the function there, maybe it's better to do this first. So I need to figure out the other. From this function, I think it's easier to. Or maybe I should just spend more time here to figure out this other classes here, how they are related to the actual control nodes that are going to be. So obviously here, this function is going to set up based on the enum here. This one is probably the one that is used to set up the layers, like the thing says there. So like these are probably the boxes there, or what kind of boxes are going to show, because different types of things have different boxes on the layers. So it's probably this thing here. So I'm trying to think. I think for these ones, maybe I spend, so yeah, probably spend more time on this one until I make sure that so there's two different ones that I need. One is the checkbox, the other one is the inputs for the value. So I think I have to figure out this two. To spend more time here trying to figure those two out. And once I figure those out, once I make sure that I understand what control node it is, then I try to implement the control node on the physics slider that I have there. And once I figure that out, then I think I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna try to search for the docs, study how the docs on the editor works to see how the resizable parts on the left here works, so I can do basically the same thing. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to create exactly the way that they do here, but not with the system that they use for the management of docs, because I just want the left side here. But I'm gonna try to implement in the same way that it is here. Then once I figure out the class that is responsible for creating this, which I think is probably the separator there. So I have to create like a container, then create a separator for like one side is going to contain the icons, the other side is going to contain the whatever shows up that is related. Like very similar to basically the same thing that VS Code has here. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. So the other thing is but then I think that's probably after. So yeah, first figure out the thing. So I finished the slider, and so probably finishing the inputs on the slider, and then setting up the thing, because the thing is more annoying, like this structure here with the icons. Then once I figure that out, then go back and try to implement the rest of the states there, the edges and stuff like that. So the main one, I guess, is different for each thing. So probably it's gonna be a string name, I think. Or maybe not, because the one that I was looking at, like, this is not a string name, I think. Like, that should be a float, but maybe it is a string name and converts to a float. I think it could be object. I'm just gonna go on chronological order based on which one. It might be the string or... I try to put -1 here. Oh, so it does work. Interesting. So it is probably the floats. So this one, I'm pretty sure, is the one used for the layers. So it's probably this one, I think. Obviously, I can look into all of them. But I think that these are the other thing you can do is just try to implement the class directly, just see what happens there. I wonder if they probably have the node there. So editor property, easy. Also, they don't have here. Yeah. No, I think that this one is probably related to this component here. What I'm gonna do is just implement. So this is probably, so maybe I should create another class so that I make sure I don't mess up the other one. Yeah, this is what I'm gonna do. So I'm going to create another class. It's probably the easiest way, because maybe it doesn't matter that much. Like, you can just comment stuff out because there isn't much stuff on the physics slider. But I think I'm gonna change the custom slider one. I can implement the other class like the physics slider, and then I leave the other one the same way. Let me think about this. So like what I'm thinking about is based on the class that I have here. So obviously there is this one and the other, this one. So like what is the best way? What I'm probably gonna do is just to, based on these classes here, I just copy the same stuff and then I just change the functions here. Because here are just signals that are gonna determine what happens on each event. But I'm more curious to see what is the, I think that this one is the one that shows up here. So I think that the easiest way to figure out which one is which is to just try to implement each class there and just change the functionality just to see how it looks. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna stop here because it's already late and the timer ran out. But probably next time that I stream, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to create a class now. So I'm gonna change this one. So instead of using the slider, I use whatever class I create. So maybe it's not. It's kind of annoying to delete later. Yeah, but it's probably the easiest way to do it. So I'm just gonna. So the way that you put the classes on the module is just by registering here. I did a bunch of streams on this already. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna, instead of having the physics slider there, I'm just gonna have this GUI experiment class. And then inside of the constructor of the GUI experiment, I just get whatever classes that they use here for each property there. And I try to see if I can figure out what is the. I think I'm probably gonna be able to figure out all of the what control nodes they use to implement, to display or to change values for all the properties on the classes. Then once I have that, then once I clarify that very, very well, then I can change the component that I have there so that it uses the same stuff that they use. And after I do this, then I go back and I study the editor node. Because I do remember on the editor node it's going to be like almost in the end there of the constructor. If I remember correctly, they have some stuff about docs. So they have a class that they use to manage the different docs. And it's probably going to be related to this class. Obviously, it has to be related to this class. The functionality for the resize here, I basically want to have the same thing, but maybe with a different style eventually. but the same functionality with a different style. Which is another thing that is kind of annoying to figure out. So I should change the thing. But once I have the class, I think it gets a lot easier, because then obviously I'm gonna be able to see like all the functions, like dive deeper into the functions of the classes, just see what kind of stuff I can change from the class, and then just watch a bunch of tutorials on the theme and how that works. Yeah, but I think it's pretty much, no, this is another one. This is docs something. It's plugins. It's probably just easier to search for docs. Yeah, so this is the place. And I think that there are many classes. This is not the only one. Yeah, so the editor doc manager. This is the class that I was thinking about. So they use this class here to determine. Each one of these is going to be one of the main docs there that they have. So the file system is this one. The sing is probably the one in the top there. The inspector is going to be the one that I was just seeing. It's base, and then these classes are the ones that manage each thing, I think. So I think by studying this one, it's probably going to be just this stuff here, probably. But I want to clarify more how does this work, the relationship between the docs, so I can do the same thing that they are doing there. Just separate. But first, so I'm going to write down here these steps. That's different. So maybe yeah, this is the problem. I'm probably gonna have to merge the show, because here, like, I don't want either this one or this one. I want both of them. So I'm probably gonna have to change them. So combine both of them for each thing. Because I want the ability to be able to change based on this, and obviously should type the value. Oh, but here, we also allow you to type. Interesting. Yeah, so it's probably gonna be this one then. Yeah, so just implement this one there, which is probably the one that I was looking at. Not the same control node they use for changing the floats with iSlider. Then once I do that, go back to study editor node, understand how they create the resizable docs. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time. So I'm probably just going to look into the class they use and then search the class directly on the editor and then implement there. So the idea that I have is just to implement here first. So once I implement here, then I create a class. So this is the other thing, but the button, I'm not really sure. The icons, I'm not really sure if I'm gonna. They probably have an example as well. They definitely do have stuff that they use with, but I don't think it's the same like pattern that I'm thinking about doing. So yeah, maybe the file system. Yeah, the file system is probably. Yeah, but it's not quite the same thing, I think. But I think it's probably going to be just the texture button and with the SVG to set up the icons. So I think that probably what's going to be is just like a V container. So a V container separates on the vertical. There's going to have two children. One children is going to be the one that contains the icons, and the other one is the one that contains the states. And then the class that has both of them is going to inherit. I'm going to create a class that inherits from vContainer that is going to have both these classes. And then on that class, I'm going to be able to merge the states of the two. So one of the classes is going to be the one that creates the amount of icons, the amount of texture buttons the thing is going to have, depending on what kind of application it is. And the other class is the one that's the functionality on the button class. No, the main class is going to be connected through the button class with the normal signal. And then on that function, I can change the state of the other class based on whatever happens. And the other class is going to be the one that contains the component here, which is going to be inside of the other container, I think. Which is probably going to be... Yeah, I think that it's going to depend on whatever class. So like the class that I put on the side, it has to fit inside of whatever container I put there. So I think this is probably the easiest way to do it was like this. So I separate the main container in two, but I'm not really sure because I'm thinking about like if you do two V containers. So if you use one V container to separate using the separator there, if you're forced to have the other side as a V container. And if that's going to change the layout, or if I can just do any class that I want there on the other side, because I imagine that for different things that you want to display, it's probably going to change which one is better for the whole thing to be encapsulated by. So this is the thing. I'm not really sure. But I think once I get to the point, it's going to be easier to think about this. But I'm probably going to do it from the editor first. So look into the code, figure out what's roughly what classes they use, then test right away in the editor to see how it looks. Once I have an idea from the editor, then I can pass everything to the code. But I think the hardest part was probably this one. So I'm pretty happy that I found the class there that I wrote down here. So I'm going to look into this one next. Yeah, that's the classes. Changing the floats, so it's ladder. That's the classes. So I think once after this is probably. So I'm gonna remove this shoe because these are the ones that I was gonna do here. Oh, texture button implements. Possible. I'm probably gonna search only for two, or like, because on the other project, on the front end there, I remember I did a folder and I had a bunch of, I just got the SVG code for each one, and I had a bunch of them that I was thinking about using in the beginning. But I think I'm just gonna test with two probably, or like a couple of them to see how it looks. But I'm probably just obviously going to start with one, which is going to be the one that has the functionality there on the barn set. So like once I have this setup, I might spend time looking into the tab as well. So for the functionality here, but I think in the beginning probably not. Yeah, maybe it is worth it because the other thing is gonna be more complicated. I think there's other steps here. So like essentially what I'm trying to do is just have like a layout in the beginning, because once I have that on code, then obviously I can reuse every time. And it's just going to be easier and easier to build a bunch of stuff, which I think it makes a lot more sense than to build. And I'm not really sure, maybe I should look for if other people have done it, but I think I briefly looked into it, but maybe someone else has done this as well, because I don't understand why people don't do this. Because for me, it makes a lot more sense to build, because then each time that you have a new class, you don't need to build it again. And it's just going to be a funnel. So, because, yeah, it's a funnel reflected by the data. So I'm probably going to come back or stream soon, and I'm just going to continue the steps here. So see you then.